Hi everyone. So today we will solve this problem daily temperatures and we are provided with an array of integers called temperatures and we have to return an array called answer such that answer I is the number of days with which we will have to wait after the ith day to get a warmer temperature. So let's look at the example to understand the statement. So on the day one, the temperature is 73. So what we have to find? We have to find after how many days the temperature will be more than 73. So if you see after one day, the temperature becomes 74. That means after one day, the temperature will be more than 73. Okay. So if you look at this entry, 69. Okay. So after how many days the temperature will be more than 69? After one day, correct? So that's why we have one over here. If you check for this 75, after how many days the temperature will be more than 75? 1, 2, 3, 4. After 4 days. Okay. And if you notice, for the last day, the value which will be stored in the output will always be 0. Why? Because on this day, the temperature is 73 and there is no more days after it. So there will be no more temperature after 73. Okay. So that's why this will always be 0 in every test case. So let's try to solve this problem and understand it in more detail. All right, so this is the given temperature array. And to solve this problem, we will try to represent it using a line graph. Okay, so let's represent it once. So first of all, we will have 71, then we will have 75. If you notice, the line is increasing, okay, because the values are also increasing. Now we got 60 because value is decreasing. Now we got 50 and then we got 90. So if you notice here, there are two types of line. Okay, one line is increasing and one line is decreasing, right? So if you say this line, this is increasing and this line is also increasing, whereas this line is decreasing. So basically, our array is divided into two parts. Either the values are increasing or the values are decreasing. Okay. So now if you see in this, for increasing values, the answer will always be 1, the number of days, right? Why? Because if the next value for a current temperature. So the current temperature is suppose 71. So the next temperature is 75, which is greater. So for 71, the answer will be 1 because after one day, we will see a more warmer temperature, right? Similarly, for 75, the next day the temperature is 80. So for this also, the answer will be 1. So basically, the first thing is that if the value is increasing, we will have to simply store value 1 if the value is just keep on increasing. So we just have to look at the next temperature and if it is more than the current temperature, we can simply say that the answer will be 1. But when the trend goes downward, okay, when the value starts decreasing, in that case, what we have to do? So if you see for 80, the next value is 60. So right now we do not know if there exists any temperature which will be greater than 80. So what we have to do in that case is we will store these values in a stack. Okay. So for 71, 75, everything is fine. For 80, we will check the next element. If this element is greater or smaller, since it is smaller, we will have to store 80. Similarly, for 60, we will check the value, the next value is smaller or greater. It is smaller, we will store 60. Right. Now for 50, we will check if the next element is greater or smaller. So if you notice, the next element is greater. For 50, the next element is greater, which is 90. That means for 50, the answer will be 1. So the simple thing what we are doing, we are just looking at the next element. If it is greater than the current temperature, we will simply store 1. Otherwise, we will store it in a stack. Now we now we will look at the temperature 90. When we look at the temperature 90, what we have to check? First of all, we have to check, is this temperature greater than the previous temperatures which we stored? What all things which we stored earlier? We stored 60 and 80, right? So we will first check if this 90 greater than 60, correct? So what we will have to do, we will have to find the difference between the days. Okay. So between 60 and 90, the difference between days is 2. So for 60, answer will be 2. Then we will remove this element from the stack. Then we will look at the next element, which is 80. 90 is greater than 80. Again, we will find the difference between the days 80 and 90, which is 4. So we can simply store 4 over here and we will remove the element from the stack, right? Now there is no more element in the stack. Now we will check for 90. Is there any next element exist? Okay. There is no such element after 90. So we will simply store 0 for this, right? So the simple concept over here is we have to only take care about the downward trend, right? Because for the increasing trend, the answer will always be 1, as you notice, right? And whenever the line is decreasing, what we have to do, we have to store those values in a stack. And whenever our line starts increasing or the value starts increasing, we have to check with that increased value whether the previous value which we stored, like 60 and 80, is it greater or not? Okay. If it is greater, we will simply find the difference between the days and we will store it. And one more thing we should notice is we are storing value in downward fashion, right? That means if this is A, B, and C, that means value of C will be smaller than B, value of B will be smaller than A. That means on the top of the stack, the value will always be the smallest, right? So if 90, suppose this was 90, right? This element increasing value 90, if this element was not greater than C, in that case, we don't need to check with other element also. Why? Because C is the smallest element, and even with the smallest element, if 90 is not greater, then there is no point in checking with the other element because other elements are more than C. Okay, so this is one of the observation which we will add in the code also. Okay, so this is the simple explanation. Let's look at the code. All right, so this is the code, and we have a stack and the output vector. And if we see, we are simply running a loop on this temperatures vector, right? And here what we are doing, we are comparing the current temperature with the next temperature. This next index is I plus 1, right? So basically, if we are at 71, then we are comparing it with 75, right? So why we are comparing it with 75? Because we want to know if the values are increasing or decreasing. If the value is increasing, right? So we are at 71, the next element is 75, so value is increasing. So in that case, this will not be true. So we can simply store uh, 1 for the current temperature. So basically at index number where 71 is stored, we can store 1 because after simply 1 day, the temperature is increasing. Okay. Then what we are doing, we are storing this next day temperature. So basically in the next value, we will store 75. Okay. And then we will check if in the stack, if the values are there or not. If there are some values, we will uh, put the dates based on the comparison, right? So we will look at that example also. So suppose this is what this if and else conditions are doing. Okay. So suppose if this temperature, the current temperature is more than the next temperature, that means values are decreasing, right? So let's take this example. So suppose current is 80. So next is 65. So we will store NT in the stack, right? sti dot push I. We are not storing the values. We are simply storing the indexes, right? And for 65 also similar thing will happen because 60 is smaller than 65. So we will store I. That means index of 65 we will store. Now for 90, what will happen? This will not be true because we are at 60 and the next element is 90. So we will simply store 1 for 60, correct? And then in the next value, we will store 90 and then we will check if the values which are stored in stack, okay, are they greater or smaller? So in the stack, how the values are stored? First of all, on the top, we will have 65, then we will have 80, right? So First of all, the next value will be compared with the topmost element, that is 65. So we will check 65 is smaller than 90. So that is correct. So in this case, what we will do, we will find the difference between their days. So the difference is 1 and 2. Okay. So this next index minus index, which is stored at the top, will give the number of days after which we will see the temperature 90. So we will store it in output and we will remove the topmost element, that is 65 or the index of the 65, right? And then again, we will look at the next element in the stack, which is 80. And then again, we will compare and then we will store their days by subtracting the indexes of 80 and 90. Okay. And if you say, if this condition fails even once, we break. Why? Because if you notice in the stack, the first element which we store is 80, then we store 65, right? That means 65 will be at the top. And if this 90 was not greater than 65, then it will not be greater than 80 also, because elements are stored in sorted order in this stack, right? So that's why if this condition fails, we will simply break out of the loop. And after this looping, we will simply return the output. And if you can see, the time complexity for this code is big of n, because first of all, we are simply running a loop on the temperature array. So suppose this has n elements. So we will traverse n elements, right? Also, if you see this while loop, this stack can contain at most n elements. Okay. Okay. So either the elements will be in stack or we will be traversing them. Because in this scenario also, if you see, we processed 71, we processed 75. Okay. Then we processed 80, then we processed 65, and we stored them in stack, right? Then while processing this 90, we processed 80 and 65 again, while popping them from the queue and while popping them from the stack and comparing with the 90. So if you see at max, each element will be processed twice, right? So basically, the total time complexity will be big of 2n, but constant we can remove. So simply the time complexity will become big of n. Okay, so this is the code. I will share the link to this. And yeah, thanks for watching the video. Bye. Take care.